So before I turn it over to Peter, I'm going to read over some detailed things about him, things that you should know about the speaker, because you're going to hear and see these things again, right? So, Peter Bernstein, former private equity investor turned developer, was born and raised in Brooklyn Heights, New York, right? He's the son of an attorney and stepson of a noted economist, Peter Bernstein. Peter Bernstein dedicated his best-selling book, Against the Gods, to young Peter over here, okay? Peter enrolled at Yale University, so he's Ivy League, okay? He studied and majored in Russian and literature, okay? He took a teaching job after graduation for a year in the former Soviet Union, okay? From there, Peter, amongst talking with some colleagues, decided to interview with Tom Hicks. I don't know if any of you know Tom Hicks. He's the former owner of Dallas Stars and the Rangers, Tom Hicks. And for a long period of time, you could drive downtown and you would see Hicks Muse on the big skyline down there, on one of the big skyscrapers down there. Anyways, Peter interviewed with Tom Hicks. And after working there for several years, he started in 1995 with Hicks Muse and worked there to 2010. Okay. After that, Peter co-founded HBC Investments in 2011. Okay. From there, he had a vision. He's going to talk about that vision. And in that vision, he decided to purchase Southwest Center Mall, which some of you may know as formerly as Redbird Mall, okay? And currently, he's going to talk about the development and some of the things that's going on with that. In addition to that, Peter's favorite color is blue. He knows every word to the song Busted Move by Young MC. The reason I talk about that is because I was going to play it before he came out, and he busted it. He busted me because he saw it on the screen. I was going to play it and see if he was going to bust out the mic.
I could perform it right now if you'd like, as well as the entire Hamilton soundtrack.
Oh, wow. Yeah. In addition to that, he said if he had a different job, he would be a math teacher. That's from my old interview. I don't know if that's still the same. Okay? So without further ado, I'm very happy and I'm looking forward to hearing this presentation. I'm looking forward to hearing the things that is going on on our side of town and in our neighborhoods. Okay? So without further ado, give a round of applause to our guests.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The moral of the story is be careful what your wife posts on Facebook, because it can all end up in your professor's hands. All right, so I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes about the Redbird development, and then the rest of the time I'll answer questions. It's just warming up?
Yeah.
Okay. So just, you got a little bit of my background, but I had a career in private equity, which what that is really is buying companies, not having them be public, but having them owned 100% privately by the firm, trying to make them better, and then selling them in about 3 to 5 years, and basically trying to make them more valuable. And there's a lot of great things about the profession. It's very exciting. It's also a great way to make money. At the end of 15 years, I'd been very, very fortunate. I'd made more money than I ever thought I would make. And I found that there's some people in life who are just continuously motivated to get more and more and more and more, and that's how you end up like Tom Hicks owning 2 teams, or like Jeff Bezos. But I stopped having, I found I had enough, and I really wanted to do something that was a little bit more positive for society than trying to make money. And I looked around for a long time to figure out something that I thought I could do that was not just philanthropy, but that was, was an investment, but an investment that was going to be positive for people and for the community. And I ended up with Redbird. And it really came from a very simple observation, which is that I had been spending a lot of time in southern Dallas. I had been working with a few different organizations in southern Dallas. And every time I wanted to go eat something for lunch that wasn't fast food, I had to leave southern Dallas to go get it. That there was not a lot of healthy food options. There was not a lot of quality retail. I noticed there were very few office buildings, very few nicer apartment buildings, and yet I met a lot of people that were solidly in the middle class, and people who wanted quality amenities, who deserved quality amenities, and who were just going elsewhere to get the quality amenities that they wanted, but were unable to get them in their own community. And that seemed both wrong and a wasted opportunity, because there was, I'm sure in this class you've learned about supply and demand. There was a big demand for this sort of quality, and there was no supply of it. And I began to investigate why that was, how that came to be, and what a possible solution to it was, and that's where this whole Redbird investment came from. And essentially what it comes down to is a long history in Dallas of racial discrimination, intentional policies in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s to starve the southern half of the city for capital so that there weren't a lot of investments. North Dallas is a boom town. Southern Dallas is a 200 square mile area where for 50 years there wasn't a building more than 10 stories built. That doesn't happen by accident. And so what's happened over the years is that while that's no longer the policy of the city of Dallas, and in fact the city of Dallas is actively trying to redevelop, there's a hangover from that lasts for decades. And the way that manifests itself is a perception problem. So you've got, so the investment thesis basically is that land here is very inexpensive because the demand and the purchasing power of this area is underestimated. And that by satisfying that demand, there's an opportunity both to improve a community and to make money. And that's what we're trying to do. And essentially the way I boil it down is that the popular perception in the media and in North Dallas is that that is what Southern Dallas is all about. And nobody, a lot of people in North Dallas don't think about the homes, the families, this beautiful campus, all these students who live in this area and want nice things. And that's what the misperception is. I think there's also a grave misunderstanding among people that have capital and among retailers about exactly what Southern Dallas is. I don't think people up north realize that it's a huge area. It's 200 square miles. It's a very diverse community. These are all things you know because either you live here or you definitely go to school here. And people think that when something happens in Fair Park, that has anything to do with Redbird when it's over 10 miles away. But it's all kind of lumped together in this perception problem. And so that's what we're trying to deal with here. The best way that I found to deal with it was through the Redbird acquisition. Redbird was a mall that was started in 1973 by the DeBartolo family. It was a very popular mall. It was a very successful mall. Interestingly, it was a multiracial mall because at the time Oak Cliff was predominantly African American. The adjacent southern suburbs, Duncanville, DeSoto, Cedar Hill, Lancaster, they were predominantly white. Everybody went to Redbird. Around the 90s, in the late 90s, it started to decline. There were some crime issues in the community. And also Cedar Hill began to grow and become more affluent. And two of the anchors left Redbird to go down to Cedar Hill, Dillard's and JCPenney. And once a mall loses its anchors, it's kind of in a death spiral. And so it death spiraled for a long time. The owners tried to change the name. That didn't do anything. In fact, it offended people in the community who felt that the owners were trying to run away from the Redbird name, which was a real point of pride for people in the community. And essentially, it went down this long, slow decline, but it never closed. And it never closed because, first of all, it is the only mall in southern Dallas, the only mall in a 200 square mile area, and because people rallied around it and wanted it to come back, and so they kept patronizing it even though it didn't have the highest quality. And the ownership changed hands a bunch of times, and they milked it. And what I mean by that is the mall was still profitable. It was still making money. But when you own a piece of real estate, if you don't keep reinvesting the profits in the real estate, keeping it clean, keeping it fresh, updating it, keeping it looking nice, renovating it, making sure the air conditioning works, then it declines. And what they did was, instead of reinvesting, they just skimmed all the cash off that they could. So those investors made a lot of money, but they made it at the expense of the community and at the expense of the property. So I bought the mall in 2015 and have a totally different idea, which is not to milk it, to reinvest it in it. But the problem is that we're now in 2000, we're sort of in the mid-2000s, and guess what? Malls are out. People want walkable communities, they want mixed use, and no one is shopping at Sears or Macy's. They're closing all over the country. Everyone's on Amazon or whatever website you use. And so the idea has to be changed. And our idea is to turn this into a mixed-use development, but a vibrant, high-quality mixed-use development. And I'll talk more about that. So one of the big issues that we faced initially, in addition to the perception problem, was just that the parcel was owned by a lot of different people. So Redbird Mall is located in a quadrant that is bordered by Highway 67, I-20, Westmoreland Road, and Camp Wisdom Road. And there were 28 different owners of different pieces of that piece of property. Even the entire mall wasn't owned by one person. There was the inline portions of the mall, which is this green kind of X down the middle, and then each of the anchors was separately owned, and each of the little pieces of property outside the ring road were separately owned. So what I bought in 2015 was just the green. You can't really do anything with that, because if you have a crappy looking Macy's at your front door, it really doesn't matter what you do inside the mall to make it better. You still have a crappy Macy's at your front door. We now own this, which is 78 acres. We control how it looks when you drive in, and so now we can begin to execute on the vision of quality mixed use. This is a very misunderstood piece of property. Redbird has been do you guys understand what the term otherized means? So basically, when someone wants to scare someone else, they try to make something seem really scary. You can see examples of it today. Not to get political, but the way the president and others talk about immigrants, how there are these masses of people that are coming to attack our country. That's otherizing them. It makes people view another group of people as something other than themselves. That was done to Redbird. That was done to all of southern Dallas, where it was made to seem so different from North Dallas that it seemed really far away. In fact, Redbird is closer to downtown than the Galleria up north is. It's very, very close. It is surrounded by a lot of middle class and upper middle class, well-to-do communities. It's at the intersection of two major highways, so it is a terrific piece of property. I was the only person who bid on it when it was up for auction. Nobody else in the entire city, nobody else in the entire country was interested in this piece of property because it had been made to seem so awful. And that was the economic opportunity. It has a very attractive audience. It's a solidly middle-class community. There are a lot of community assets. By that I mean other reasons for people to come into the area. So you have almost all of the African American megachurches are within 2 miles of the area, and then you've got a lot of institutes of higher education. We're at one right now. You got Dallas Baptist, Cedar Valley, UNT Dallas, Paul Quinn College. Those are all within about a 10-15 minute drive of Redbird. And so there's a lot of reasons that people are coming into the community, and then they would shop, work, eat, go to a movie, etc., to complement the audience. And then the lack of competition for these quality amenities is shocking. So we opened a Starbucks in December. It is the only Starbucks in southern Dallas. There are 3 kiosks. There's one at Methodist, there's one at UNT, there's one at a Target, but there are no other freestanding Starbucks south of I-30 in the city of Dallas. That is a 200 square mile area with one Starbucks. You can't name me any other city in America that has 200 square miles without a Starbucks. There are no movie theaters in the city of Dallas south of I-30 except a new one, the Alamo Drafthouse up on Lamar, which is spitting distance from I-30. So you have a 200 square mile area with no movie theaters. There's limited grocery. There's very, very limited Class A apartments. Very few office buildings. No branded hotels. All the hotels around Redbird, I'm sorry to say, are hourly rate motels. Okay? There's no Marriotts, Hiltons, Hyatts. So the lack of quality amenities is stunning, which means that there's a big, big opportunity at Redbird to put something in where there'll be no competition. None of this would be happening without the city of Dallas. This project requires a lot of public investment. And the basic reason is simple. We want to produce a quality asset that would be the same quality as you'd get in North Dallas. But the rent we're going to get is probably a third of what we're going to get in North Dallas because of all of the perception problems that we've got. And so if you want to spend, it costs the same, brick and steel and labor cost the same in southern Dallas as they do in North Dallas. So the costs are about the same, the rent is lower, and so if the city wants to see this sort of economic development, they have to subsidize it until such time as the rents come up. And so the city has invested a huge amount of money in the Redbird project because they believe that this will be a proof point so that the next developer will be able to command better rents. This is an area of the city, I've talked about it a minute ago, where there's not a great track record of real estate developers doing right by the community. Most people have come in, bought properties, and milked them and provided a second or third tier quality product. And so the community was not excited when I bought the mall. And again, there's a racial dynamic there. A white guy from North Dallas comes in and buys an asset that's in the heart of the African American community in southern Dallas. That has not always ended well for the community. And so I had a lot of work to do with the community to win trust, get advice, seek out partnerships. I've probably had, way over 100 community meetings. And the result is that the community told me exactly what they wanted. That's what we're delivering. The community told me they wanted to benefit economically from all the construction, and so we have a program to make sure that a lot of the construction work goes to locally owned, minority-owned businesses. And the result is that we've garnered a lot of support from the community, but it took a lot of work to overcome all that distrust that, frankly, was well earned. the community should distrust when someone buys a property because history tells them to. But fortunately, we've been able to overcome that. We've announced a lot of deals. We've got some terrific businesses. We've got a large medical clinic. Again, real lack of medical facilities in southern Dallas. We have a Marriott Courtyard coming through. We've got the Starbucks. We've got a Class A apartment building going up that has a big affordability component to it. So we're delivering on what we said. And, oops. So I'm going to show you a picture of it, but let me describe what we're going to do. Just, yeah, last slide. Okay. What we're going to do is turn this into a mixed use. So what we're going to do is every anchor building that we own, and we don't own all of them, we own 3 out of the 4 remaining anchors. Every anchor building we own is going to be all professional use. So we'll have medical and office in the anchor buildings. And the reason for that is that the anchor buildings used to be Macy's, Sears, JCPenney, Dillard's, and Burlington Coat Factory. And the business model was that those were all huge department stores that drew a lot of traffic, and they had big advertising budgets. And so they would put out big ads saying, we got a sale. People would come to it, and then once they were there, they would walk into the mall and buy a t-shirt or get an Orange Julius or whatever it is they would do. Well, no one's going to those stores anymore. They're all closing. So we had to think of some other things to put there that would actually drive people to the site. So what are the few things you can do that you really can't do online or generally don't do online? Go to the doctor, go to work, live, stay in a hotel, go to a restaurant, go to a movie theater, go bowling, anything really that involves the word go. You got to go somewhere. And so we're putting all those sorts of uses around the mall. That will drive demand for retail, because once people are there, they're going to want to eat, they're going to want to do their Christmas shopping, they're going to want to run in and do an errand. We're putting in a green space, more than one green space, in fact, because people want to be outside. Over on the right, you can see the apartment building, and next to it is a Marriott Courtyard hotel. And so there'll be about 500,000 square feet of office and medical, about 200,000 square feet of indoor retail, and then on the out parcels and in the parking fields, we'll have some more retail and restaurant. And so the hope is that this will become a 24/7 destination where people will be there all the time, either for a concert in one of the green spaces, or because they live there, they're staying there, or there's a movie there. We're looking to get movie theaters. We want to get an urban air. We want to bring in quality amenities, family-oriented amenities that people in southern Dallas want, but right now they're traveling to Arlington or North Park to get those sorts of amenities. So that's the background on Redbird. This is a very long-term project. I mentioned earlier that at my old firm we tried to buy companies, hold them for 3 to 5 years, and then sell them. That's the way most real estate investments work also. Because the way the real estate industry works is somebody raises money from another person, they invest it, and the way they're going to make money is by keeping a percentage of the profits. Well, you can only keep a percentage of the profits after you've sold it, because that's the only time when the profits materialize. And they want to do that as quickly as possible. So they're looking to do investments that you can turn around in 3 to 5 years. We've been at this over 4 years, and we're just getting going, because this is a harder project. So we have a 15 to 20 year time horizon. Now, I don't think it'll take that long, but we're willing to wait 15 or 20 years for this really to come to fruition. So that's something called patient capital. And it's basically a strategy where you believe that the best way to make a return is to take a longer time to do it, that you'll ultimately do better if you take your time with it. And a perfect example of that is we're looking for grocery, but we want like a Whole Foods or a Central Market or something with fresh fruit or a Sprouts. There's nothing like that in the area. we got an offer from a grocer to come, but it was a very low-end concept. It wasn't a lot of fresh fruit. It was, the stuff still in cardboard boxes, not a high-quality amenity. If we were looking for a quick flip, a quick deal, they were going to pay plenty of rent. We would have made money on that deal, but we said no, we're going to wait until the right offer comes so that we can curate this environment that we're trying to make that is really high quality. So that's the presentation. Happy to take questions from you. And
I have a seat over here. So I'm going to tell you, so Peter and I, we met through an acquaintance, it's actually through the mayor's office. We both were appointed around, not too far from each other, but he and I, we were put together on an introduction email. We've never met before. I've read about him. I knew who he was. But before we actually met, we ran into each other about 3 weeks ago at Ann's Health Food Store down the street here. Ann's Health Food Store. Anybody ever been over there? Ann's? Okay, that's probably only one of the few places around here where you can actually go and get organic food, fruits and vegetables, sandwiches, things like that. So I usually go there about twice a week, and that's where I eat lunch if I don't bring my own lunch or if I don't go home.
And I do too.
And so I order my food, I'm sitting at the table, and I look up and I see this guy, and I'm like, he looks familiar to me, right? And so I pull out my phone. It's like, this looks like Peter. So I pull out my phone and I look at the picture, and I'm looking at him, I'm looking at my picture. He looks over at me and I say, have we met each other? Do we know each other? He said, no, my name is Peter. And he stuck his hand out and he shook my hand. And I stood up and I started laughing. I said, I'm Reggie. We're supposed to meet next Monday for coffee. And we both started laughing. But just that coincidence, that coincidence is just trying. And I'm glad he came here because as you can see what's going on around you, Dallas is building, it's growing, right? And you're a part of that whether you like it or not. I mean, how would you like to, work or enjoy things like right there in the circumference of your own area, or have to drive 20 miles to Arlington or 15 miles to North Park or the Galleria in those areas to try to enjoy yourself when you can just do it right up the street or less than a 5-mile radius? I mean, that's what we're talking about. And the things that Peter is doing, he's trying to provide a better quality of life, and that's what we're talking about in the class. That's why we're talking about the extra credits, the voting. Those of you that are 18, I hope that you're registered, and I hope that you've went out and voted, because today is the day, right? And in addition to that, the yoga practices, the giving back to the neighborhoods, the giving blood, participating at the North Texas Food Bank, it's to make a better quality of life. And you got to do it yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And that's the whole point. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start off with a few questions, and then from there I'm going to open up the questions for y'all. And y'all ask Peter whatever you like to know, okay? So the first thing I'm going to say is our theme for this lecture series is called Make America Think Again. So in your own words, what does that mean to you? How would you relate to that phrase, Make America Think Again? Whatever you want to say.
Well, I think, here's what I'll say is that we live in very polarized times, right? And part of the reason for that is that everyone is in their own bubble. Conservatives watch Fox, liberals watch MSNBC, people are self-segregating to live in parts of the country and parts of even neighborhoods where people think like them. And I think the problem is that, like I talked about before, that allows the people who disagree with you to be otherized. They seem other. And I think both sides are guilty of it. I think some are more guilty than others, but I won't I won't go into that. So to me, Make America Think Again is really about everyone really taking the time to try to see someone else's perspective and at least understand that just because they feel a certain way doesn't mean they're stupid or horrible. They have a different experience and a different perspective, and you can disagree with someone, and you might even learn something, and you might even at least understand where they're coming from, if not change your own.
So I'm going to talk a little bit in detail about your background. So when I grew up, and where I grew up in Louisiana, most of the people that I knew or could identify that were millionaires or multimillionaires, they were either athletes, rappers, or doctors or attorneys, right? You're in a day and age where you have a lot of different occupations that can make you a lot of money. And one of the things that we talk about in this class is growth, economic growth and development, and what drives growth and what drives development. So based on your background, can you just tell us a little bit, in addition to going to Yale, what are some of the things in your background that have prepared you to be a business developer?
Well, I mean, here's what I'll say is that I feel like I was born on third base. I mean, I didn't realize it when I was a kid because it was all I knew. But, you know, I grew up, both my parents went to college. Both my parents went to Ivy League college. All of my grandparents went to Ivy League colleges. My father was a very successful lawyer in New York City. It was never a question that I was going to go to college and that my father was going to pay for it. None of that was even on the table. It was so far from did I have to worry about food? I mean, I didn't have to worry about anything. And so it's only as I got older that I realized that just that circumstance is extremely unusual and gives people an extreme advantage in life. I think the first time I ever understood the value of that was so you mentioned my grandfather. I really consider him my grandfather because he and my grandmother got married when I was 1. He was an incredibly successful economist and did very well. And I asked him once what was the key to his success. And he said, I was born a white male in New York City of wealthy parents in 1919. And he said, I was given a high school education, I was given a college education. He said, I started my career in the 1950s, and if you couldn't make money in finance in the 1950s, you know, you were crazy because it was booming. He said the peak of my career was in the early 80s. That's when the stock market started to take off. And basically, this guy was a brilliant, brilliant man. But he attributed almost all of his success to his circumstances that he had nothing to do with. And that really made me think. Now, having said that, there are a lot of people that are born on third base and they end up on first base. And so I do think that there's a lot of personal characteristics that go into it also. And I would say the biggest personal characteristic that I've worked on in my career is being able to talk to people. And being able, I mean, what business is really all about is motivating people to do what you need them to do for you. I was just having this conversation with my daughter last night. She's a senior in high school, and she's an editor of the yearbook. And she was complaining bitterly about the people, the freshmen on her team that were not doing enough page outlines, you know, page layouts per day. And I said, this is your problem. You're trying to be a leader. You can't be a leader unless you've got people who are agreeing to follow you. And so that is the most important skill set I think you can have. is really being able to relate to people, to be able to motivate people, and people are motivated by leaders who understand them, who genuinely care for them, and who can create a mission that's bigger than themselves. People want to be a part of something. I've never had an easier time recruiting people for jobs than for Redbird, because people like the positivity and they want to be a part of it. And so I think that's the most important thing.
Okay, so to piggyback on that, can you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, my leadership style is, first of all, I have a no assholes policy in my life. There's no reason to be one, and I don't want to interact with them. Sometimes you have to, but I try never to be one. I'm not always successful, ask my kids and wife, but I try never to be one, and I find if you treat people with respect, you get it back. I also find that sometimes something happens where there's you need to have a sense of urgency about it, and if you very rarely get to the tone where you're conveying frustration, disappointment, or a sense of urgency, it gets taken much more seriously. If you're yelling at people all the time, they tune it out. Again, just ask my kids. So I try to, not that I want to be friends with everyone I work with, but I try to create a relationship with people where they are motivated to help because they care about me, because I care about them.
I'm going to switch up the topic a little bit. Have you ever lost an opportunity to do business with an important or potential partner, and can you tell us why, and what did you learn from that experience?
I mean, it happens all the time. Right. I mean, with Redbird, I have definitely learned how to take no for an answer, because the stigma of Redbird, the stigma of Southern Dallas is so strong. And again, it is rooted in a very ugly racial history in this city, in this country. It's rooted in myths that have been perpetuated for so long that most people who are perpetuating them don't even realize where they came from. They don't think of them as racial in root, even though they are. But I have had to learn to deal with no. Oh, that's not our target demographic. Oh, that part of town can't support this level of amenity. Oh, there's nobody here who can afford a $5 cup of coffee. On and on and on and on. And really, I just have to keep smiling, thank them for their time, check in with them again in a year, and just keep going, and to work to find somebody who gets it, and eventually you find someone. The other thing I'll say is that I've been, the biggest rejection I ever got in my life was when I applied to business school, and the first place I applied to I didn't get into, and I was so arrogant that I just assumed I would get in, and I didn't. And it was like a slap in the face. But the result of that was I moved to Dallas for a job instead of going to business school, and had a great career, met my wife, have 3 great kids. My entire life I mean, I'm from New York. I never thought I'd live in Dallas. I've lived here almost 25 years. So that rejection turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me.
Awesome. What motivates you, and when I mean by motivates you, what motivates you to want to do a great job and take risk as you are currently pursuing?
Well, the thing is that I'm very risk averse. I mean, I've played it very safe in my life. Like I said, I was able to go to a great college. I went into investment banking, which is not risky. I went into private equity at a time when it was booming, and I wasn't risking my own money. This is the first risky thing I've ever done, and frankly, I don't view it as that risky. I feel so much conviction about it, and I risked a lot of money, but I also risked an amount of money that if I lost it, it wouldn't ruin my life. But you know what motivates me every day to get out of bed? It used to be, you know, trying to get rich. You know, I really, because I grew up very privileged, but not wealthy. That was really motivating for me in my 20s. To me, I associated it with independence. And what motivates me now really is the good that this is doing. And it's not like we're saving the world. I'm not under a delusion that we're solving all the problems. But when I go into that Starbucks at Redbird and I see it crowded with people who a year ago, there was no place in that neighborhood where someone could just go with their laptop to do their homework, or go with their laptop to work, or go with their kid on the way to school to pick up breakfast and coffee. There was nowhere around there. And there's a community that now has that dignity, and that it shouldn't be a luxury, but it sort of feels like one. That really makes me feel good. So that's my motivation.
That's funny. I was thinking, so over in Victory Park, Tristan Simon, he's spoken in my classes several times, and he opened up Hatchaways, which is like a work study space for people in the area to come in and they could eat and then rent an area in order to have business meetings or study or whatever the case may be. And we're in the process of doing some of those things here at Mountain View College. And so I wanted to ask you, in addition to that, so how do you sell unpopular ideas? What is your process of, like the presentation that you did? I'm sure you've done that numerous times. So how do you sell like unpopular ideas and get people in the community to gravitate to what you're doing?
I would say it's about honesty, facts, and data. So in the community, it was about honesty. In the community, it was about acknowledging the history, acknowledging the mistrust, honoring the mistrust, sort of affirming the rationality of it, and then listening. And you know, people just want to be heard, and people just want their pain to be acknowledged and verified. Dallas is really great about looking forward and really bad about looking backwards. And I just don't believe you can heal a wound without acknowledging that it exists and apologizing for it. You know, if you have a fight with a friend, it's not going to be gotten over unless there's a discussion about it and some mutual understanding. So that with the community, it's really just about trying to be very candid. And I've gotten much more comfortable talking about things that are very uncomfortable to talk about, like race. I've gotten much more comfortable doing it, because if you don't address it, like, you cannot talk about Southern Dallas without talking about racism.
Right.
Like, there's no way. People try to. People talk about economic disadvantage. They talk about, you know, infrastructure-related issues. It all goes back to one thing, and one thing only. And that one thing is what everything else sprouted from. And if you don't go back to the core that everyone understands is the core, but no one wants to talk about, you're never going to move forward. So that's with the community. With businesses, it's about facts and data. It's about saying, oh, really, this isn't your target demographic? What about a $62,000 median household income isn't your target demographic? What about the fact that the demographics of the workforce at 67 and 20 are identical to the demographics of the workforce around 75 and Central? Excuse me, 75 and LBJ. Exactly the same demographics. One is like chock full of office buildings. The other one, oh, it's not the right demographic. So it's about facts and data. And I have to say, in this case, the fact that I put personal money in it gave a lot of credibility, because it meant that I wasn't just spouting BS, that I actually believed it.
So how many of you know what a business developer does or is? Any? Nobody? Huh?
Can we take a break?
Yeah, I want you to just, I want feedback.
Helps you develop a business and build it up.
Say it louder.
Someone that helps you build a business and like basically start it and get it going.
Okay. Someone that helps build up businesses and keeps them going.
No, helps you get it going.
Helps you get it going. Okay. Anybody else?
Can I just add on to this?
Sure.
Like an investor
Okay. An investor that
that like helps you provide you with what you need.
It keeps the business going. Okay. Anybody else? Would you like to add in on?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually never been called that before, but I think it's a good title. I mean, really, to me, what a real estate developer is somebody that comes up with an idea for an entire area that all works together. So it's not just a building, it's a whole community. And I'd say, if you have a business development role at a company, your job really is to create revenue. I mean, at the end of the day, your job is to help, you're exactly right, it's to create the business that works. But it can be done through, it's really all done through relationships. You have to create a relationship with the customer to find out what they want. And then you have to create a relationship with a supplier to find out if they have what you want. And it's really about putting all of the different pieces together so that it all works. I mean, I used to say that my job at Hicks Muse, and I feel that way today, is to hit the conference call button, or to be like the hub with a lot of spokes. So if I'm in the middle here, I've got an architect over here, an engineer over here, a leasing agent over here, a construction manager over here, a community liaison over here, a banker over here, a broker over here, and they're not all talking to each other. They all are, I'm the central repository of information, and what one does may have an effect on the other, and it's my job to make sure that it all sings together.
That's perfect. I'm going to open up, because I have a lot of questions here, but I want to open up to the audience to see if any of you have any questions for Peter right here in front of me.
What caused you to want to open it? Like, did you just see it for sale and you're just like, that sounds fun? Like what?
No, it was so it all dates back to this idea that I was in southern Dallas and there was nowhere to eat. And I was talking with two friends of mine. I was doing there's this thing called the Leadership Dallas program, and it's a program for people like, I'd say, mid-30s to mid-40s who are interested in getting involved civically in Dallas but need to learn about the city. So I met a group of really interesting people, and one of them lived in southern Dallas and one of them lived in North Dallas. One was African American, one was white. And I was talking with them about how there was nothing to, there was no good places to eat that I could find in southern Dallas. And the African American woman said, do you know that up until recently, there were no IHOPs in the entire 200 square miles of southern Dallas? And the other guy said, well, maybe that's because black people don't like pancakes? And I was like, that is so dumb. But he thought that was like a reasonable explanation. So I started to try to think, okay, how can I play on that? How can I make money on that massive misperception about this part of town? So I actually tried to buy the IHOP franchise for southern Dallas, but it turns out you have to buy the whole state of Texas, and that was way more money than I had. And so I started looking for, how can I provide a quality amenities in Dallas, in southern Dallas, that will fit with this thesis I have that the purchasing power is there, the demand is there, but the supply isn't there. And I ended up deciding that real estate was the only way to do it, because if you just open one restaurant and it's surrounded by, you know, check cashing and payday lending businesses, it's probably not going to work. Then I felt like I had to create an entire environment. And so I started looking around for real estate in southern Dallas that could satisfy that. And the first place I looked was the Lancaster Keys Shopping Center. Are any of you guys familiar with that? So it's at the corner of Lancaster and Keast. It's by the VA hospital, and it's a fascinating property because it looks like a big strip center, and that's what it is today. But it turns out that the strip center is actually the second floor of an underground mall, and that what is now the front entrance to the strip center is actually the back door. The front door used to be on the inside of the mall, and there's 600,000 square feet of mothballed, empty space down there that back in the 60s was a real center in Oak Cliff. There was a bowling alley, there was, I think, a J.C. Penney there, and I looked at that and ended up not being able to buy it. The seller was unrealistic about what it was worth, and then the mall became available, and I was able to buy it for the right price, and there were a lot of risks with it because I couldn't buy any of the other land, but that was so I was willing to take that risk. So it was definitely not like it just came up and I did it on a whim. I'd thought about it for way over a year, looking for the right place looking for the right place to implement this thesis, and then it happened.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that there's no limited amounts of movie theaters and Starbucks and hotels. Is it because of the perception of South Dallas, or is there a reason behind that?
I think it's because of the perception. Because there's no, I mean, look, there are areas of poverty in southern Dallas, right? No denying it. And there are areas of poverty in North Dallas. But the entirety of southern Dallas is not poor. Most of southern Dallas is solidly middle class. And there is no reason why there shouldn't be a Starbucks. The reason why I say it's perception, not reality, is that the Starbucks at Redbird is doing so well. They projected it to be a profitable store, and they are selling 50% more coffee than they expected to. So there is no reason, I mean, that says that it is a great location. It's the best store opening they've had in the Dallas market in years. So, and this is not the only location in southern Dallas where a Starbucks can work. It's just that southern Dallas has been so stigmatized that it's very often not even on a map. So I'll give you an example. We were recruiting a company to come open up an office in Dallas. It's an Atlanta-based company. They showed me the pitch book that they got from their Dallas-based broker. So what a broker does is a broker's job is to go out and find locations for a potential tenant and then show them, oh, you want to move to Dallas and you need 50,000 square feet? Here are the 10 different locations that have 50,000 square feet available for lease that are in your price range. And then you show them all. Their map of the Dallas-Fort Worth area started at I-30 and went north. It showed North Dallas, Plano, McKinney, Frisco, Allen, Prosper, Las Colinas, South Lake. It showed nothing south. Like it didn't even exist in Dallas. Now, part of that is because there aren't any office buildings there. And part of that is because the way southern Dallas has been stigmatized, it is treated as if it doesn't even exist. So I think it's a perception. And by the way, for you guys, I think there's a huge opportunity because the world is waking up to something that you guys probably already know, which is that there are vibrant communities here that want nice things, and there are opportunities to put those nice amenities in and do well. Whether you want to start a restaurant or build a small office building, or buy a small office building and renovate it, or buy a home and renovate it and sell it. There are 1,000 different ways that you guys can personally benefit from developing Southern Dallas and take advantage of the fact that you all have a piece of market information that a lot of other people don't have, which is that Southern Dallas is different than a lot of people think it is.
Or you could remain to see it be abandoned or sit back and wait and watch somebody else take it over.
That's the other thing, is that the danger of development in Southern Dallas is gentrification. Does everyone know who can give me a definition for gentrification? Come on.
They're gonna have to write a paper on it anyways.
No one's heard the word? Go ahead.
They've heard the word.
Is it taking something old, like an apartment complex, making it built and the prices rise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So living there can no longer afford to.
Exactly. So gentrification is a real issue that Southern Dallas is going to battle. So gentrification can mean lots of different things. It can mean putting in the quality amenities that people want in the community and serving the community. But if you're not careful, what ends up happening is exactly what you just said. The prices rise, rents rise, and the people who've lived in that community forever can't afford to live there anymore. So for instance, West Dallas, does anyone here live in West Dallas? So tell us what's happened with Trinity Groves coming in.
They've knocked down a lot of the houses that were there, and they put apartments and new houses in.
Right, and can the people who've lived in West Dallas for all these years afford those apartments? Right, so that's a problem. When the land itself is improved and the neighborhood itself is improved in terms of the physical amenities, but the people who get to enjoy those amenities are brand new, and everyone else has to move out. So one thing that needs, and I guarantee you the next place that's happening is Fair Park, because Fair Park is north, the northern part of Southern Dallas. The park is being revitalized. You can see downtown, you can walk to downtown. But Fair Park is organized. They watched what happened in West Dallas, and they're working to make sure that the amenities come in, but that parts of the community remain affordable for people who live there now. So one reason I would encourage you to be involved in this is that if you want to make sure that your communities are the ones that are benefiting from these new amenities that are going to come in, you got to be proactive about it. And maybe do it yourselves.
There's an urban development plan that's supposed to roll out 2020 here in Mountain View. It's going to involve apartments, retail, commercial, and some other things. And it's supposed to be affordable housing based off of students and workers that are in the area. So we'll see how that goes. But some gentrification is not bad, but a lot of it has a lot of bad stigma to it. I had Laura Miller come in. Matter of fact, her PowerPoint is on the same thing as yours, and she talked about why Cowboy Stadium was not in Fair Park and why it went to Arlington. That's what her whole presentation was about. If you don't know Laura Miller, she was one of the former mayors of Dallas, I think the 4th female mayor of Dallas. But I had her in last year, and she talked about gentrification and talked about why the Cowboy Stadium went to Arlington and not Dallas. And so a lot of our discussion was about gentrification in that class.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me the thing that people are worried about is displacement. I don't think anyone is opposed to quality amenities coming into a community. It's about who gets to enjoy them. And I think it's great when new people move in. because frankly, the increased income in the area is what's going to drive those quality amenities. It just has to be done in such a way that they're adding to the community, not replacing the community.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Okay, one more question and then we'll go into the Kahoot game. Anybody? Gun shy? Okay, well, let's start.
All right. Do I get to play?
No. Take a seat.
I want to watch the screen. What time is it? How much is that?
Almost 10:40.
Okay. I'll match you, but I only have $100 bill on me. If you put the 100 in, I'll Venmo you. There.
Give it to him. I'll just give it.
You'll what?
I'm just gonna I'll just do 100.
Okay.
All right. Instead of $50, it's $100. First question. Where did he grow up? Where did Peter grow up? graduate from? Okay, everybody was listening. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, man limits. All right, now we're gonna get a little more detail to see if you were paying attention now. Now we're gonna see if you're really paying attention now. Okay. What year did Mr. Grosky start working at Hicks Muse? Okay, so we got a couple more questions. Let's go. Let's get serious. All right. What year did Redbird Mall open? Oh, 1974. We're talking about that. Not only were we talking about it, it was on the PowerPoint. Okay. Two more questions. Come on, bro. What year did you buy the mall?
Uh-oh.
All right. So we see people going back and forth. This is the last question. This is the last question. This is the last question. This is going to be hard. It is going to be hard. Last question. What is the name of that book named dedicated to Peter? What is the name of that book? What is the name of that book?
Did we say it? Did we say it?
Yeah, I said it. Against the gods.
You just said it again.
By the time I said that, they hadn't already clicked, they wouldn't have won anyway. All right. Let's see who the winner is. Talia, come on down. Get right in. I'm going to have you stand in the front, and I'm going to give them.
Congratulations. Spend it in good health.
Congratulations.